You're not my wife anymore. You think you can just show up here after what you did? You have no right to be here.
He stood on my dock with another woman beside him and said, "You're not my wife anymore." He said it loud. Loud enough for the fishing guide to freeze mid-cast. Loud enough for his mother, sipping tea on my porch, to smile like she'd waited years to hear it. Loud enough to finally make me stop pretending I didn't already know. I hadn't planned to be there. Otis Kavanaugh, the caretaker who'd watched this land since before I could walk, called me that morning. Strangers were unloading furniture onto my property. I thought it was a mix-up. I thought maybe Tanner had invited friends and forgot to mention it. Instead, I found my husband standing on my father's dock in white linen, sunglasses pushed into his collar, acting like he owned the water, the trees, the porch, everything my father built with blistered hands. Beside him stood Presley Nash, his assistant, his secret. Now, apparently, the woman he decided should enjoy my family's lake house. She wore my mother's straw hat, the one Mom bought the summer before she died. Tanner didn't look guilty. He looked annoyed, like I'd interrupted something I had no right to know about. "Why are you even here, Harper?" he asked. I looked at the suitcases on the porch, the wine bottle sweating on the railing, Presley's sandals kicked off by the sliding door, his mother's purse sitting in my mother's old rocking chair. "This is my house," I said. Tanner laughed. Not loud, worse than loud. Soft, like I'd said something a child would say. "Don't embarrass yourself, Harper." Presley lowered her sunglasses and looked me over. Tanner said, "You get dramatic when you feel left out." Left out from my own home. Tanner stepped closer, voice low but sharp enough to cut. "The divorce is basically done. You're not my wife anymore." Something in my chest went still. Not broken. Still, because once a man says the cruel thing clearly, he also stops making you guess. I looked past him at the water. The same water my father taught me to row on. The same porch where my mother braided my hair. The same house Tanner used to mock, saying it smelled like old wood and poor people's memories. Now he wanted to hand it to someone else. "Go home," he said, and turned his back on me. I looked at him, then at Presley, then at his mother, still smiling like she'd finally won something. And for the first time in 15 years of marriage, I did something Tanner never expected. I reached into my bag, pulled out my father's brass key, walked past all three of them, stepped inside, and locked the door behind me. He laughed first, then he tried the handle, then he pounded. "Harper, open this door." I walked past the photographs in the hallway, past the stairs where my father carved my height into the wood every summer until I turned 16. I picked up the phone and called Otis. "Change every gate code," I said. "Call the sheriff. Get his boat off my dock." Outside, Tanner kept pounding. He didn't understand yet. The second he told me I wasn't his wife anymore, he handed me the last excuse I had for protecting him. "My name is Harper Doyle." Marriage turned that into something borrowed. But before Tanner, I was only ever a Doyle. This lake house sat at the quiet end of Elk Ridge Lake, where the cypress trees leaned over the shoreline like they were whispering secrets nobody else could hear. My grandfather built the first 2 rooms with his own hands. My father added the porch at 17. My mother painted the kitchen yellow because she said every house needs one room that looks like morning. I grew up here. Birthdays on paper plates, cousins asleep on the floor, my mother laughing louder here than she ever did anywhere else. My father, Walt Doyle, ran a small hardware store and fixed half the town's broken things for free. He used to tell me, "Harper, don't confuse a locked door with a lost house. Sometimes locking the door is how you protect what love built." I didn't understand that. Not then. My mother died when I was 23. Cancer. Fast and cruel. My father changed after that. Not loudly, just dimmer. 9 years later, he was gone too, and the house came to me. Clean deed, clean trust. A letter waiting in a cedar box. My sweet Harper, this house isn't valuable because of the land. People will see water and timber and money. You remember laughter and work and promises. Don't let anyone turn this into a trophy. The right person understands a house can be a heart. The wrong person asks what it's worth. Dad. Tanner glanced at that letter once. Never read it. Just looked at the deed and said, lakefront property is a serious asset. Your dad was smarter than he looked. I should have heard the warning bell right then. I didn't. I met Tanner Griggs at 27. Polished, tailored, working in commercial finance, talking about acquisitions like a man still earning his seat at the table. His mother, Marlene, believed class could be performed. Chin up. Never admit what you can't afford. Tanner said he admired that I worked for a food bank nonprofit. You care about things people ignore, he told me on our third date. Years later he'd use that same sentence like a weapon, you waste yourself on broken people. We married by the lake. My father walked me down the wooden steps. My mother's straw hat hung on the porch rail because I wanted her there. Somehow, after the ceremony, I found my father alone by the water. Are you happy, Dad? He watched Tanner across the lawn, eyes scanning the property like he was pricing it. I'm happy if you're safe, he finally said. That's not what I asked. I know. I didn't understand why that stuck with me. I do now. After my father died, Tanner stopped being careful. Or maybe my father's presence had been the only thing keeping him polite. We should rent the lake house out during peak season, he'd say. We should modernize the kitchen. Tear out the old cabinets. The kitchen stays, I said. You're emotionally attached to a depreciating structure. It's my family's home. It's a house, Harper. No, it isn't. Marlene hated the house for a different reason. It gave me something Tanner didn't control. At dinner one night, she said, it's a shame you never folded the lake house into the marital estate. Family share, dear. My father shared it with me, I said. Tanner looked at me across the table like I'd caused a scene. Don't make everything sound like an attack. That was the pattern. Marlene cut, Tanner corrected the bleeding. By year 10, I'd built a whole life around adjusting. He criticized, I explained. He stayed out, I waited. He flirted at parties, I told myself I imagined it. You carry grief like furniture, he told me once. Every room with you has something old in it. The worst part wasn't the cruelty. It was that he was never cruel every day. A hand on my back at dinner. A soft, I'm stressed, Harper, you know I love you, right after saying something unforgivable. That kind of affection doesn't feed you. It keeps you hungry. Then Presley Nash arrived. 32, sharp, ambitious in the clean, hard way Tanner respected. Within months he talked about her like a strategist, not an assistant. Presley understands pace, he said. One night I looked up from my laptop. Pace? She anticipates things. Doesn't need everything explained. At a charity gala, Presley shook my hand and said, I've heard so much about you. The sentence had teeth. Good things, I hope. Interesting things, she said, smiling. Marlene adored her instantly. Of course she did. That night, sitting at our table, Marlene lifted her glass and said, Harp's very loyal. Not everyone's built for the sharper parts of Tanner's world. Presley looked at me. How lucky for Tanner to have someone so steady. Steady, like a chair, like something useful left in the background. I smiled. And how lucky for him to have employees who know their place. Tanner exploded in the car. You humiliated me. No, Tanner, I answered her. She's important to my work. Then promote her. He slammed his hand on the wheel. Not hard enough to scare a stranger, hard enough to make the silence enormous. You always do this, he said. Make me choose. You were supposed to choose when you married me. He had no answer. I knew then, the way women know before the proof arrives. Tanner had already chosen. He just hadn't told me yet. The evidence came slowly, then all at once. A hotel receipt in his gym bag. 2 spa charges during a solo work trip. Presley's name lighting up his phone at midnight. One Sunday, I drove to his office for a file he claimed to need. His car wasn't there. Hers was. I waited across the street 20 minutes. They came out together, his hand on the small of her back, her laugh loose and unafraid of being seen. I didn't confront them in the street. Some moments deserve better staging than a parking lot. He came home at 10:30 with flowers he clearly wasn't expecting to still be holding. Where were you? At the office with Presley. How long? He loosened his tie. You're tired. We can talk tomorrow. How long do you want honesty, he said, or a performance? That sentence told me he'd rehearsed it. Honesty. Fine. Yes. There's something between us. It wasn't planned. Nothing cruel is ever planned by the one begging forgiveness. I've been lonely, he said. You disappeared into your dead parents, that lake house, your charity work. Do you know what that's like? Some sentences don't just break trust. They burn the bridge back to respect. My parents aren't the reason you cheated, I said. No, he said coldly, but they're the reason you never became the wife I needed. I went upstairs. He didn't follow. The next morning he made coffee like nothing had happened. I called a lawyer instead. Renata Voss had silver hair and eyes that made grown men fold their hands in their laps. Otis had already warned me, my father put something in place years ago in case anyone tried to claim access through marriage. That night, after Tanner fell asleep in the guest room, I opened my father's cedar box and read page 9 of the trust. The lake house wasn't just deeded to me. It sat inside the Doyle Family Preservation Trust. I was the sole trustee. No spouse, partner, or creditor could access, lease, occupy, or borrow against it without my written consent. Unauthorized occupation, even by a spouse, counted as trespass. My father had built a fence around this house long before Tanner ever tried to climb it. I cried for an hour, not from sadness, from something closer to being found. Tanner filed for divorce first, framing me to our friends as unstable, obsessed with a falling-apart lake house. Marlene told my aunt, we tried to love Harper, but some women prefer grief to marriage. Presley posted vague quotes about choosing happiness without guilt. I said nothing. Silence looks like weakness to people who've never seen someone prepare. Renata reviewed Tanner's filing. He wants the townhouse, half the investments, and temporary access to the lake house pending settlement. I almost laughed. Access? He's calling it a marital vacation home. It was my family's before I knew him. I know, Renata said. And thanks to your father, so does the court. He called for weeks. I stayed in an apartment near work while he kept the townhouse and Marlene redecorated rooms I'd chosen. I let them. That house had never been my heart. This one was. Then one Thursday in May, Otis called, his voice tight. Harper, you sitting down? What happened? Your husband's here with Miss Nash, his mother, 2 trucks, furniture, suitcases, wine. He told the movers he had permission for the summer. I went cold. Did he get in? He still has a physical key to the side door. I locked the main system, but years ago, during our marriage, I'd given him that key because he was my husband. The trust could protect the title. It couldn't protect me from the mistakes love makes. I'm coming, I said. 3 hours and 6 minutes. I didn't cry. I didn't play music. I thought about my father. I thought about page 9. There is a quiet that comes after heartbreak and before action. It doesn't feel angry. It feels clean. That frightened me a little. I found the gate open. A moving truck by the side door. 2 men carrying a white outdoor sofa across my lawn. Marlene sat on the porch, sunglasses on, sipping iced tea from my grandmother's tall glass. Otis stood near the dock, arms crossed, watching everything with the face of a man trying hard to respect the law before doing something else. Tanner saw me first and pulled off his sunglasses. Harper. I looked at the furniture, the wine, Presley by the sliding door wearing my mother's hat. What are you doing here? Using the house. We're still legally married. You're making this ugly. You broke in. I used a key. You no longer have permission. Presley laughed softly. It's a weekend, Harper. Don't be dramatic. I looked at her. Take off my mother's hat. Her smile froze. Tanner stepped between us. Don't speak to her like that. I almost admired how fast he defended the woman who'd walked into my house wearing my dead mother's belongings. Get out, I said. Marlene stood. You should be ashamed. Tanner has every right to relax after what you put him through. That glass belonged to my grandmother. She glanced down and shrugged. Then she had decent taste. Otis took a step forward. I raised my hand slightly. Not yet. Tanner moved closer, lowering his voice. You are not going to embarrass me in front of people I brought here. Louder now, performing. You're not my wife anymore, so stop acting like you can control what I do. This house was part of our marriage. I have every right to be here. The dock went silent. Even the movers stopped moving. I walked past him. He grabbed my wrist. Not hard enough to hurt, hard enough to stop me. That was the last mistake he made on my property. Take your hand off her, Otis said, and there was nothing soft left in his voice. Tanner let go. I walked inside and I locked the door. Cedar, lemon oil, lake air, home, and underneath it, Presley's perfume, a wine glass on my mother's counter, Marlene's scarf on my father's reading chair, my parents' photo turned face down on the mantel. That did it. I set the photo upright. I'm sorry, I whispered. Then I went to the panel and deleted every guest code. I called Otis. Change the gate now. Call the sheriff. Already on it, he said. Behind an old kitchen drawer my father had kept for junk, I found an envelope I hadn't opened in years. Another trust summary and a card from Sheriff Curtis Boone, an old family friend. He picked up on the third ring. Harper Doyle. Been waiting for this call. My eyes filled. You knew too. I knew your daddy worried. Outside, Tanner had stopped knocking and started pounding. You can't lock me out. Open the door before I make this worse. I opened the window 2 inches. His face was red. Presley, no longer smiling, behind him. Marlene, talking fast into her phone. Unlock the door, Harper. No. You said I'm not your wife anymore. That's not what this is about. That's exactly what this is about, I said. You're not my husband when you want freedom and my husband when you want property. This is pathetic, Presley scoffed. Remove my mother's hat, I said, or I add theft to the list. This isn't a palace, Marlene shouted from the porch. Stop acting like you own the lake. I own this shoreline, I said calmly. That silenced her. You're delusional, Tanner said, but it was thinner now. No, I'm the sole trustee of the Doyle Family Preservation Trust. You have no occupancy rights, no access, no permission to remain. His face flickered, the first hint of fear that maybe I knew more than he'd counted on. You're bluffing. Sheriff Boone is already on his way, I said. My lawyer forwarded the trust to his office an hour ago. Otis changed the gate code. The marina's been told your boat isn't welcome at this dock. The performance was collapsing and he knew it. Men like Tanner can survive private shame. Public correction terrifies them. Sheriff Boone arrived 12 minutes later with a folder already in hand. Tanner, he said, this is a property access issue. It's my wife's property. Soon-to-be ex-wife. According to your own filing, Boone said, opening the folder, and according to the Doyle Family Preservation Trust, it's not yours. Presley pulled off the straw hat. Gather your things, Boone told Tanner. You need to leave. Tanner turned toward the house one last time. Harper, can we talk privately? I opened the door. Not all the way. Just enough to stand inside the frame my grandfather built. No, you cannot do this. I already did. You are going to regret this. I looked at him for the first time in months without any anger reaching me. No, I said. I regret giving you a key. That was the line that ended it. He left. Not gracefully, but he left. That night, I slept in my old bedroom, changed the sheets, washed every glass Marlene had touched, set my mother's hat back on its hook, set my parents' photo firmly on the mantel. Tanner called 14 times. I didn't answer. Presley texted from an unknown number, you made a fool of yourself today. Tanner deserves better. I replied once, then give him your own lake house. Then I blocked her. His lawyer sent a letter accusing me of denying access to a marital asset. Renata's response took 30 minutes, trust documents, the sheriff's report, photos of the unauthorized move-in, a formal warning that any further entry meant criminal charges. Then a message just for me, he's not used to consequences. Expect noise, not danger. She was right about the noise. Tanner told friends I'd humiliated him. Marlene told anyone listening that the lake house had made me arrogant. Presley posted a photo at a different lake, peace cannot be stolen by bitter people. Then Tanner made a real mistake. He tried to use the lake against me. His firm was courting a private development group, buying up lakefront land for luxury retreats. What he didn't know, what I hadn't fully known, was that my father had spent decades quietly buying small parcels around Elk Ridge Lake. Not to get rich, to stop developers from pushing out families who couldn't fight back. After his death, I'd inherited more than the house. I'd inherited the Doyle Land Trust, a regional conservation trust controlling several parcels Tanner's firm needed to build their resort. Renata and Otis spread the maps across my kitchen table, easements, water rights, dock permits, protected covenants. My father did this, I said. Your daddy understood men who look at trees and see invoices, Otis said. Tanner hadn't wanted the lake house for a weekend. He'd wanted to establish use, blur the lines, pressure me during the divorce so his firm could get its foot in the door. He thought I was too grief-soaked to notice. That was the moment my sadness turned into focus. At the county development hearing, Tanner didn't know I'd be there. He walked in with Presley beside him holding a tablet, Marlene seated behind them like moral support in pearls. Glossy renderings went up on easels. Happy families, clean docks, sunsets with no mosquitoes and no displaced neighbors. Then he saw me. His face changed before he could stop it. An elderly woman named Mrs. Odom stood first. My husband died fishing on that lake, she said, voice shaking but steady. My grandson catches bluegill off the public bank. You put gates and private docks everywhere and call it progress. Progress for who? I stood next. For years, I'd made myself smaller in rooms with Tanner. Not that day. My name is Harper Doyle, I said. Not Griggs. I'm trustee of the Doyle Land Trust. My family has protected this shoreline for 3 generations. We support responsible growth. We do not support projects that treat community history as an obstacle. The Doyle Land Trust does not consent to any access, lease, or partnership connected to this proposal. Presley went pale. Tanner stared at his papers. The project didn't die that day, but it lost its center. Investors got nervous. Environmental review got harder. The glossy rendering stopped looking like destiny and started looking like risk. In the hallway afterward, Tanner caught up to me. You've made your point. No, I made my position. This could benefit everyone. Then build it somewhere that belongs to you. You're doing this because of Presley. I almost laughed at the arrogance. That betrayal was still the biggest thing in the room to him. Presley isn't important enough to destroy a lake over. His mask slipped just for a second. You think owning old land makes you powerful? No, I said. I think respecting old land makes me responsible. His investor, standing close enough to hear everything, said quietly, we should revisit the risk profile before moving forward. Tanner's face hardened. I walked away. That was the beginning of the end for his project. Investors withdrew one by one. A local reporter asked to interview me. I said yes, once, on my own porch, water behind me, my mother's kitchen glowing yellow through the screen door. The headline read, "The woman who locked her ex out is now locking developers out, too." I hated it. Tanner hated it more. His firm put him on leave 2 weeks later. Internal restructuring. Presley left for a job in another city. Marlene stopped complaining about me once someone finally asked her why her son tried moving his girlfriend into his wife's family house before the divorce was even final. Funny how fast gossip loses its appetite when the truth finally sits down at the table. Tanner came back once in late autumn. He didn't make it past the gate. The code had changed. The camera flagged his car before he even stepped out. I walked down the gravel drive myself. Leaves scattered across the ground. No Presley, no Marlene, no movers, just a man and a locked gate. I lost the project, he said. I know. I didn't think you'd fight this hard. You didn't think I could? He gripped the bars. Did you ever love me? The question didn't hurt anymore. Yes, I said, very much. What happened? You kept asking love to prove itself by taking pieces of me. One day, there were no pieces left I was willing to give. He looked past me toward the house. I always hated that place. It made me feel like there was a whole part of you I could never own. That's because love was never ownership. I'm sorry, he said. Maybe real, maybe too late. Both could be true. I turned and walked back to the house. He didn't call after me. The following spring, the Doyle Land Trust opened a small shoreline program, restored the public fishing bank, repaired old docks, built a stewardship center in my father's name. Children ran near the water at the opening. Otis wore his best shirt and pretended not to cry. I hung a plaque near the porch, protected in honor of Walt and June Doyle, who believed land isn't truly owned unless it's loved. That night, after everyone left, I sat alone on the dock. The house glowed warm behind me. The old floors creaked the same way they had when I was a child, the sound Tanner once called depressing. To me, it sounded like memory breathing. I thought about the day he stood on that dock and told me I wasn't his wife anymore. He thought those words would erase me. Instead, they gave me back my name. People ask if I regret locking him out. I don't. I only regret not doing it sooner, because some people never earn a seat on your porch. They never deserve to drink from your grandmother's glass, sit in your father's chair, or wear your mother's hat. They only understand what they had after they lose the key. By then, the gate is already closed and the house is quiet again. Finally,